Welcome back to the Toyota Solutions studio. I am so psyched to be joined by Jacquelyn Birdsall. She has an incredible resume at the very top of it, senior engineer for Toyota, but she is also a board member of the Women Influencing and Impacting Toyota. And clearly Toyota is being impacted by voices like yours because they have been a steady sponsor of Women in the World. Thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you start by talking about the partnership between Women in the World and your company?
Absolutely. So Toyota began our sponsorship of Women in the World specifically through a program we called Mothers of Invention, where we award a $50,000 grant to a woman entrepreneur who has kind of identified a need in the world and has taken it upon herself to solve that problem. And so we've given them the visibility through, the brand, obviously the brand image, being a part of the Toyota Mothers of Invention group, and now we're up to 22 Mothers of Invention that we have given grants to for over $1 million that we've invested, and we're just starting with that. We plan to continue to support them and see where they go, and
it's so good to hear that there's still funding for that kind of thing. And we've talked to so many of the Mothers of Invention. They all have extremely innovative ideas, and they're tackling global, huge problems in some cases. Innovation is a big part of being awarded this grant.
Yes.
Why does Toyota feel like it's so important, especially for there to be women innovators out there?
Oh, that's such a good question.
They come from like a different perspective.
First of all, I think that at Toyota we believe innovation from anyone is important, sure. Right? Innovation is what drives improvements in the world, especially to these big problems. What the unique aspect that these women bring to the table is that women go through different experiences than men. They have a different background. And effectively, if I even look at it from an engineering standpoint, if you don't look at solutions that are being offered by women, you're effectively missing out on 50% of a possible solution to a problem. And I mean, statistically, that's just unacceptable, right?
I kind of want to geek out with you at this point, because you bring up the engineering perspective. I think of big data and I think of artificial intelligence, all of which are becoming part of cars of the future.
Absolutely.
And I've read so much about the importance of having female coders and programmers.
Absolutely.
Because of things like ethics and things, just the perspective that a female brings.
Exactly, the perspective, even when we look at when we're designing a new car or trying to find out what kind of functions may go into a new car, marketing a new car, you have to take it. I mean, if you don't have a woman on your team giving input, you are effectively missing out on 50% of the voice of the customer. Absolutely. And again, that's just unacceptable, and it's something that once we work together and get to go off of your entire lifetime of experiences, and each person has something to contribute. Not only women or men, whatever ethnic background you come from, everyone has a story and a background that they come from. And when you're trying to find a solution to a big problem, like, for example, with our vehicle, the environment, you need as many inputs as possible just to even start to get that conversation going, to make people think out of the box, to really come up with the big solutions that we need to drive that change.
So I'm so curious about your own interest in cars and where that started, and was it specific to cars?
It was very specific to cars, and it came out of nowhere. According to my family, I came from a family who had never done anything mechanically inclined. Our idea of tools was like a hammer and a butter knife. Huh. And my best friend got her first car when I was 15. She was just a little older than me, and as soon as she got her Civic and we started playing with it, I became totally obsessed with vehicles.
And so what was your path then from the interest in your friend's Honda to becoming an engineer? And were you inclined toward the engineering sort of science subjects in school?
Not at all, and I think I think it was because I didn't really know it was available. And I think we've heard even from some of our Mothers of Invention, they've said things like you can't be what you can't see, and we've actually funded their program to help get people like me into classrooms for this exact purpose, so that young women can be exposed to these careers and say, hey, this is a possibility for you in the future. I think that's so critical. So for me, it just became, I loved working on cars. When family members' vehicles would break down or whatever, everybody would turn to me, and I kind of became like the source of information to help people. And there was a lot of, at the time, maybe distrust in mechanics, and your vehicle is one of the biggest purchases of your life.
Right,
and
this is an issue, right? Like as very few, women in older generations knew what was going on with their cars, didn't know how to fix a flat.
And in many cases, they were getting ripped off.
They were getting
right?
ripped off.
They're getting ripped off. So, and
I sense I'm still getting ripped off.
Yeah, and a lot of people do, and so for me, it kind of became a challenge, to start to protect my family and my friends, and to help them take care of this huge investment, which is also hugely personal in a car culture like the U.S.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very personal thing, your car. But then that drove me to start working at an auto shop. I took up auto class at school, and along the way, there were certain people who would say, you can't do this, or you don't actually want to do this. This is what I heard from so many older gentlemen in my life was, you don't actually want to get dirty. You don't actually want to work on this. And that kind of stoked the fire. I think we heard yesterday fed fuel to my fire, because that challenge of being told I couldn't do something was a kind of an additional.
Yeah, it's that chip on the shoulder that a lot of us need.
Yeah. And so then that started a whole nother snowball into, okay, like, you think I can't do this, I want to do it, and I want to do it better. And then I was introduced to a friend who was a mechanical engineer through my mother, because she did not understand at all where this obsession with everything automotive came from. So she reached out to a friend and said, from our church, said, oh, she wants to be an automotive engineer. Can you talk to her about that? And as soon as I learned what he did, I was like, oh, absolutely.
Good for your mother for igniting it even further. I read that you describe yourself as a proud nerd.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about how that's been sort of a paradigm shift, that it's okay now to be the little girl with your head in the books, which I was as well. I still am.
Yes.
And that's cool, because you're going to come up with innovations that could change the world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've always kind of surrounded myself with fellow nerds who are just, the most spectacular people. But as you mentioned, growing up particularly, it was not really seen as what a girl should do. It wasn't what we were told to be pretty and quiet and cheerleaders, and I was none of those things. But I did love working on cars and skateboarding, and I think actually I was watching my little sister grow up, and when Harry Potter became a big thing, and all of a sudden everybody at the school started reading Harry Potter, and every
girl wanted to be Hermione.
Every girl wanted to be Hermione, and it was just like an equalizer. Like, all of the cool kids are reading Harry Potter, or the nerds are reading Harry Potter, and all of a sudden there's like just this base nerddom that everybody is on board with. And that's where I think I kind of started to see the shift was not so much in my generation as it was in hers. And now in hers, it's like, oh, you're intelligent. That's sexy.
Yeah. And now those of us in the older generation can maybe own that a bit more.
That's sexy.
Yeah.
It's no longer like, what's on the outside. It's what's on the inside, and are you driven, and are you passionate, and do you have a purpose? And that's what people are finding attractive.
I wonder if you see also in your little sister and that generation, a sense not to be afraid of, the classic male-dominated fields in mathematics and engineering, and whether you're actually seeing that shift, or we're just hearing about it because that's what we all want.
I'd say the only real example of that I have is on my team in Los Angeles in research and development. We are the only team that's half female, half male in research and development. And most of them we're pulling directly now from colleges as they're graduating with advanced engineering degrees.
That's great.
And so we're already actually starting to see that shift take place even in Toyota, where in something that was previously so male dominated, like the research and development field in the automotive space, is now already starting to be filled with these really powered, inspired women who knew coming out of high school that they wanted to be engineers.
Before I let you go, we're going to get back to the mothers of invention, and who I always find so fascinating, how they got their start. What characteristics about some of these women that I'm sure you've interacted with and met at the summit inspires you? What do you learn from them?
Wow, that is such a good question. I think the thing that inspires me the most about them is their grit.
Yeah.
That they you know, I know a lot of people, and even in my office, you know, every time as an engineer we see a problem, we want to solve it, and then it goes into curiosity. What's the problem? Determination. I need to see this problem through until there's a solution and fruition. But for the most part, we're given a safe space to do this, where these women have had to completely chart their own territory and go out there and be the face of their companies, fully put themselves out there and commit their entire lives to these causes, and kind of just show pure determination and grit to get their causes heard, and then to have us have the honor of acknowledging them and try to promote them and give them a bigger voice to share their cause with the world is really the most important part of Mothers of Invention. Yeah. And I think that their grit is really inspirational.
Well, you are as well. I mean, I see the grit and I see the tenacity, and you're equally inspiring. Thank you so much, Jacquelyn. It's really been a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Enjoy
so
the
much.
conference.
You too.